The race weekend in Miami starts with a single free practice session under challenging conditions. The track, characterized by low grip and an asphalt temperature that nearly reached 50 degrees Celsius at the beginning of the session, saw Max Verstappen finish at the top once again, leading the timesheets at the end of FP1 ahead of McLaren's Oscar Piastri and Ferrari's Carlos Sainz. It was a complicated start for Charles Leclerc, who, due to a spin as soon as he hit the track, hardly took part in the first free practice session for the Miami Grand Prix. Scuderia Ferrari has carefully studied the characteristics of the SF-24 single-seater during the past week, in preparation for the sixth round of the 2024 Formula One Championship. It has done so in order to better understand how to optimize the car's performance regarding the layout and characteristics of the Miami International Autodrome in Florida. A lot of focus has been on the tire problem, a real unexpected headache in recent outings, especially in the previous round of the season, the Chinese Grand Prix. Several tests have been conducted on the hysteresis cycle of the Pirelli tires in order to provide Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc with all the necessary tools to maximize results and access the maximum grip of the Pirelli tires. For the rest, the technicians of the Maranello team have prepared a basic setup for medium downforce, useful for favoring top speeds on the long straights present in Miami. In the first run, both SF-24 cars left the pit lane with a set of hard compound tires, the most feared after what was seen at the 5.45 1-kilometer Shanghai International Circuit 2 weeks ago. From the first laps, the two Ferrari drivers were asked to implement the measures studied in the Maranello simulators. This action was necessary to have the first feedback on tire warm-up strategy choice. It's about finding the right compression for each corner in the outlap, providing the necessary energy with the clear goal to hit, and above all, maintain the correct tire operating window based on temperatures. In the first 2 laps, the red cars ran without using the drag reduction system. The purpose was clear: to gather data on the aerodynamic efficiency of the SF-24 car. Overall, the balance seems good, considering the dirty track and the harder compound that offers a less exceptional grip level. Once switched to engine mode 4, the Monegasque driver tries to push a little harder to start testing his car more aggressively. However, as he reaches the third sector, at the height of turn 16, the Ferrari driver spins, simply losing the rear and is awkwardly in the middle of the road. The limited space and traffic do not allow for an easy maneuver to restart. Race control decides to display the red flag, while Charles Leclerc's clutch temperature rises tremendously, and the Ferrari goes into a preventive shutdown. Ferrari race engineer Xavier Marcos Padros communicates to the Monegasque that he cannot restart, and the former Alfa Romeo driver is therefore forced to abandon the car. A huge setback for the Italian team, considering the only hour available to identify the ideal setup ahead of the sprint qualifying session. Charles Leclerc is therefore forced to watch his Maranello teammate, who will now provide the only reference in terms of data to be collected in the first free practice session for the Miami Grand Prix. With the Italian car out of the way, the session resumes. Carlos Sainz leaves the pit lane with the same set of white-banded Pirelli tires as before the session was red-flagged. His Ferrari race engineer Riccardo Adami asks him to perform a test using maximum power on the internal combustion engine. Engine 1. The first attempt is ruined by traffic, forcing the Spaniard to lift off. Carlos Sainz decides to cool the tires and launches again on a fast run, able to squeeze the internal combustion engine once more. Despite the traffic, the handling of the Ferrari driver is still good. Looking at the onboard footage from Max Verstappen's camera, we can say that the drivability of the Ferrari at this moment seems cleaner compared to the reigning world champion's Red Bull RB20 single-seater. Riccardo Adami, the Spanish engineer, provides an endless array of suggestions, especially regarding the controls behind the steering wheel. We are talking about toggles that allow for modifying various pre-mapped parameters together, such as brake shaping and mid-corner differential to manage rotation. Going into more detail, car number 55 shows good qualities in the fastest sections and is agile in direction, changes where the rear manages to follow the front without particular problems. There's a hint of understeer in the slower sections of the Miami International Autodrome, but nothing excessive. Also good is the ability to ride the curbs to cut corners. After pushing his car on a hot lap, Carlos Sainz embarks on a mini-run with a high amount of fuel on board. We are talking about 5 laps to check the balance in a race pace simulation, once again using the hard compounds, tires that literally drove the Ferrari drivers crazy in the second stint of the Chinese Grand Prix. Once again, we have to confirm the good impressions on the push lap. Clean racing lines and very few corrections that the Spaniard had to make. It seems that the setting studied in the simulator manages to confirm the data collected in the hypothetical field. With 10 minutes left in the first and only free practice session for the Miami Grand Prix, the Spaniard hits the track with a brand new set of soft tires. There's a lot of focus on tire warm-up, which seems to work well thanks to the benevolent temperatures in Miami. Carlos Sainz's qualifying attempt is quite clean, although he encounters traffic in the third sector, which undoubtedly slows him down. At this point, he opts for a double cool-down lap with a pit lane passage. In the pit lane, Carlos Sainz requests and obtains a change in load at the front, 0.2 up to balance the load compared to the rear. The second attempt with the softest tires available for this weekend ends without any particular problems. The Spaniard shaves off 2.5 tenths from his previous lap time and generally defines himself satisfied with the car. Ultimately, at least for Carlos Sainz, we can definitely consider the 60 minutes available as positive. The Spaniard seemed comfortable at the wheel of the SF-24, assisted by a precise and stable car. On his first attempt, the Spaniard lapped in 1:28.979 before improving to 1:28.711, which put him third fastest. He completed 24 laps. It's a pity for Charles Leclerc, who made a fatal mistake, and then unfortunate for the clutch issue, which effectively left him stranded. The Monegasque now head into a blind qualifying session, and will have to rely on data from his Maranello teammate regarding the setup for sprint qualifying. Oscar Piastri's second-place time provides an encouraging start to the weekend for McLaren, with the Woking-based team bringing a substantial aerodynamic update package to the track, which will be fully tested by Lando Norris this weekend. As confirmed by McLaren, Oscar Piastri's car is equipped with about 50% of the update package this weekend, since the upgrades require extensive trackside adaptation work as well as significant mechanical labor under the bodywork. After demonstrating the functionality of the developments from a mechanical and aerodynamic perspective, Oscar Piastri will have the full package available for the Imola round in Italy. It's worth noting a problem on Lando Norris's car, which experienced an asymmetry in the power steering, an issue that will be resolved before the sprint qualifying. The driver of McLaren car number 4 did not perform a fast lap simulation at the end of the session, thus finishing outside the top 10 in 16th position. It's also worth pointing out that McLaren, along with Scuderia Ferrari, Aston Martin and Sauber, will enter the track with fresh power units. Mercedes' performance remains somewhat of a puzzle, as they came to Miami with a new floor. In FP1, George Russell was the first of the pair, finishing in 4th position, less than 2 tenths behind Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, posted the 7th fastest time, behind a strong Lance Stroll and the Red Bull of Sergio Perez.